Hello, everyone, and welcome to New Consciousness Review. I'm Miriam Knight, and our guest today is Mirabai Starr. Mirabai is an adjunct professor of philosophy and world religions at the University of New Mexico in Taos. She is the editor of the Sounds True Saint series, Devotions, Prayers, and Living Wisdom. She's a contributor to Living Fully, Dying Well, and is known for the acclaimed translations of Dark Night of the Soul by John of the Cross, The Interior Castle, and The Book of My Life by Teresa of Avila. Today we will discuss her new book, God of Love, a Guide to the Heart of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Mirabai is a passionate and personal explorer of the unifying wisdom of the three Abrahamic faiths that is reflected in this new book. It's her hope that this book will serve as a reminder that a dedication to loving kindness is the highest expression of faith for all three religions. A fabulous message, and I'm so delighted to have you, Mirabai. Welcome.
Thank you, Miriam. I'm honored to be here.
Mirabai, I understand that even from the time you were a young child, you were very spiritual despite being raised in a secular Jewish family. Tell us about your background and how that put you on the path you were eventually to take.
Well, it's almost in spite of my upbringing that I seem to have taken this spiritual path in my life, because my parents, as you mentioned, were secular people. They were Jewish, but they had really rejected what they considered to be the patriarchal aspects of institutionalized religion. And Judaism, to them, represented many concepts and behaviors that they really felt were unhelpful in this world, especially in terms of a consciousness of social justice. Like the angry father god thing did not work for them. Plus, I think that they were really part of that generation of people just after the war who had really given up on religion, and it did not seem to be a viable option any longer for a lot of American Jews or a lot of kind of westernized Jews. And so they really began to explore alternative spiritualities, such as native traditions and particularly Eastern philosophy, Buddhism and Hinduism. But mostly, I would say, anything that felt to them like organized or institutionalized religion was rejected. And we moved from our kind of upper middle class suburban lifestyle in New York to the mountains of northern New Mexico when I was around 11 via a year of adventures in the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico, which at that time in the early 70s was completely undeveloped and wild. And when we ended up in Taos, New Mexico, they really plugged into the whole back to the land alternative lifestyle scene, the counterculture really. And as a result of that, I was exposed to a place called the Lama Foundation, which is still a thriving ecumenical community here in the mountains of northern New Mexico that was dedicated to really the intersection between all the world's spiritual paths. And through my association with Lama, I began to really fall in love with each one of these paths individually and then somehow collectively, starting with Hinduism and then Buddhism and then Sufism. Interestingly enough, everything but Christianity, which I just wasn't really exposed to until later when I was in college and I encountered the Christian mystics and began translating them, which is now what I am known for is my translations of the Christian mystics as a Jewish, Sufi, Buddhist, Hindu.
You know, I have the sense that something very similar, there's a similar dynamic in society today that kind of replicates what was happening in the 60s. It is this kind of circular yearning for meaning, yearning for connection and moving into the mystical side. Now, in some cases, it's taking the form of New Age and paranormal and looking for the magical. In other cases, it's a kind of a movement into the more right-wing evangelical aspect of religion. Mm-hmm. As a professor of religion, where do you see things going today? How do you read the terrain?
Yeah, interesting. I think that you really struck the chord that I'm hearing resonating in the culture, which is that people are looking for meaning and purpose, but some of the kind of New Age alternatives haven't given them the sense of substance that they're looking for, that there's something too fluffy in some of the alternative spiritualities that have arisen on the scene in the last generation or so. And I'm not putting them all down, but that it sort of has turned spirituality into a commodity in some sense, that if you just sign up for the right workshop and pay money for the right online course, then you're going to be free from suffering. And I think people have been finding that they're not getting the spiritual nourishment that they're seeking. So they've rejected the institutionalized religious forms that maybe they grew up with, but they're not really finding something that feeds their souls on a deep level in some of the newer iterations of these spiritual paths. And so I find that people are really returning to some of the established religious traditions that they may have rejected, but they are doing so in a very discerning way so that they're able to sift through some of the beliefs and practices and historical behaviors that have upset them or made them feel that they were counter to their true spiritual yearning. But they don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. They want to find the jewels and mine those jewels that are there in all of the world's ancient religious traditions, underneath often a great deal of historic rubble that has obscured those shining teachings. And those teachings are mystical teachings, and they're also social justice teachings.
I get the feeling that the churches are also scrambling to reinvent themselves at this time, very much in alignment with what you're saying.
Yeah, I noticed that too. And so this process is every bit as demanding in a way as joining a monastery, and having to take certain kinds of rigorous monastic vows, because in order to be on a spiritual path, we make a commitment to walk through a certain kind of narrow gate in our lives, that our spirituality can no longer be just a matter of convenience, kind of weekend thing that we do to make ourselves feel good about ourselves, but requires a whole body participation. But that kind of rigorous commitment and discipline that I'm talking about in walking the spiritual path need not be exclusive. In fact, I feel that it must not be at this time exclusive. What I mean is, we don't have to pick one. We don't have to be just an evangelical Christian or a conservative Jew or a Muslim who obeys certain kinds of strictures of commandments regarding the religion that necessarily exclude everybody else. In fact, I think it's a time when we are called to go deeply in 2 or 3 or even more spiritual traditions, open our hearts to them, and include all wisdom ways at this time of great urgency in the world, when cultivating our spiritual lives is probably what's going to keep ourselves, each other, and the planet alive and thriving.
And what do you think will be the end result of exploring multiple religions?
I think that as long as we continue to drop down into our hearts and maybe not dwell just in our heads, I think that wonderful things are going to unfold in that place of love. There is a fire in the heart. I think it's the fire of yearning for a connection with the divine. And it's also just the fire of love that includes and accepts and embraces all beings, that is the place where the dangerous differences melt. Those concerns that we have about otherness just dissolve in the warmth of the loving heart. And I think all of the world's great religious traditions invite us into that heart space, both, as I said, in terms of their mystical teachings about loving God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind, and also the social justice teachings that are a set of very clear instructions about how to treat one another, how to treat the stranger among us, how to treat the most vulnerable members of our society, how to feel the pain of those who suffer in our own bodies and not intellectualize what's happening. For those like me who teach and study, it's very tempting to stay in our heads and just come up with intellectual explanations for this or that. But I think that the path of highest risk and highest yield is the one where we drop down into our bodies and into our hearts and simply say yes to each other.